Hello everybody, this is Gregory with 5-Minute Catholic Apologetics and Living, where 5 minutes every time I get you to the divine. Today we're going to talk about why is it that non-Catholics hate Catholics so much. Now before we begin, let's start with a prayer. Nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritui Sancti. Amen. Gloria Patri et Filii et Spiritui Sancto. Sicut erat in principio et nunc et semper, saecula saeculorum. Amen. Now, I use the word hate pretty strongly, but if you look at non-Catholics, and I think in particular, if you look at the way they treat Catholics who leave their particular faith to become Catholic, I think it's much stronger than when Catholics leave to become Protestant Orthodox or whatnot. And I think there's some factors to this. And Fulton Sheen, the great Fulton Sheen, his canonization process continue. He has that great line, and I always butcher it, but he says there's like 4 people who hate the Catholic Church for what it stands for, but millions who hate it for what they think it stands for. And I think if you look, the Catholic Church has always had enemies, in particular the devil. The devil wants to destroy the one holy Catholic Church founded by Jesus Christ. Of course he does. But in general, if you look at church history, and remember, the Catholic Church is the longest institution of human history, continuous institution of human history. There was that great line by Pius VII regarding Napoleon. Again, another line. And Napoleon was going to take the papal states, and he said, "Sir, you can't destroy what we, the Catholic Church, have been tried and have failed to destroy for 1,700, 1,800 years. So trust me, the Catholic Church and its prelates and its people have done a very good job of screwing things up in its own church." And why is that? Well, it's the fall of Adam and Eve. It's the fall of man. Christ talks about how at the end of the world he's going to separate the wheat and the weeds, how he's going to pull out the fish and he's going to separate the good fish from the bad. So the Catholic Church, like any institution created by man, whether it be a hospital or whether it be, a television corporation, there's always going to be good and bad. But either way, there's this kind of this visceral dislike of the Catholic Church. And you see this played out in little ways. Like, for example, the Orthodox. In the event of an emergency, a Catholic can go to an Orthodox Mass on Sundays if they can't access a Catholic one. And we, as Catholics, Holy Mother Church says that Catholics can go to the Orthodox and receive it. Because, of course, the Orthodox do have the true, valid Eucharist, the real presence, because they have apostolic succession. Now, do the Orthodox give us that reciprocity? Absolutely not. The Orthodox tell the Orthodox, and again, these are autocephalic churches. There is not one overall Orthodox teaching. We talk about this in the episodes on some of the issues with Orthodoxy and how some traditional Catholics are tempted to go to Orthodoxy. He's like, there's no communion of beliefs. There's no systematic theology in the autocephalic churches, whether it be the Greek Orthodox, Russian Orthodox. They're always fighting. They can't even amongst themselves agree on things. They can't even have their own meeting. But as a whole, they're like, no, yeah, in the event that you can't reach a Orthodox church on Sunday, yeah, you can't receive from the God. Absolutely not. Absolutely, it's forbidden. Absolutely not. So you see these kind of like some things which you could call maybe petty, these little petty little things. And so, like, why is this? Why do non-Catholics hate Catholics? Whereas if you look, Catholics don't really care about non-Catholic denominations. There isn't this kind of this primordial dislike. And I think if you ask non-Catholics, they will tell you, well, maybe it's history. Well, back in the day, the church persecuted my progenitors, whether it be the Anabaptists or the Calvinists, the Anglicans and whatnot. And we've talked about this before, how back in the day, religion and state were intertwined. And if there was some sort of heresy, normally that heresy would lead to unrest. You think of John Huss, you think of Wycliffe, you think of the Peasants' Revolts, you think of Martin Luther. There were revolts going on there during that time. So the church felt that, and these were state services, the state was the one that was persecuting the non-Catholics. It was not the Vatican itself. But they felt that was a form of treason when you did that. So you look at a good example of this was during Henry VIII in the 1500s. So he persecuted, once he left the church, he persecuted Catholics. Think of Thomas More and John Fisher. But then even his successor, Edward, his son, and then Mary Tudor, who brought England back to Catholicism, persecuted the Protestants. And then when she died, Elizabeth persecuted the Catholics because they were all intertwined in believing that this was undermining to the state. Look, you look at the Orthodox, they might mention the sack of Constantinople in 1204, when the Fourth Crusaders came in and sacked Constantinople, and that was a horrifically bad thing. And look, again, those were people, that was not the church. You could say that the church sponsored the crusade, but the church didn't tell, the Pope didn't tell, yeah, Crusaders, go and destroy Constantinople, right? How many times does the church tell good Christians not to do something and they do it? Slavery, for example, the church has been on record since at least Pope Eugene in the 1450s that transatlantic slavery was wrong. Did slave traders listen to that? I mean, even more recently, contraception and abortion. I mean, there are Catholics who believe, yeah, we know what the church has taught about pro-life issues for centuries. Yeah, who cares? We're still pro-choice. So you got to understand that. I think that's a very kind of ad hominem kind of attack of the Catholic Church as well. The Catholic Church has bad prelates, or there's the sex abuse scandal, or they persecuted our people in the past. And I think these are all like not good arguments, because your people actually persecuted as well. And again, if it's not connected to the actual church, it's more connected to the civil authorities. Now, I think the real reason is, I mean, you could really kind of condense it down to high school. And what do I mean by this? The Catholic Church is like the popular clique in a high school. The plastics, if you want to use Mean Girls. We're the plastics. We're 1.3 billion. We're the largest Christian group. We're the largest religious group, where you have more than Muslims. And I think that in itself causes jealousy, envy, and whatnot. And when you are the big kahuna, the big one in town, every other entity, denomination, whatever you want to call it, is going to resent that. And America in particular has this kind of like history with like you look at celebrities like promoting these nobody as stars at the beginning of their career, and so they're great, and then as soon as they're great, we want to topple them and bring them down. It's just kind of this story of America. And I think you could say that with the Catholic Church, right? The Catholic Church is so big, it's so pervasive in terms of its influence on the world since Christendom again, that there are going to be people who want to bring it down because deep down they're just jealous. Look, you look at the Episcopalians. You don't think the Episcopalians or the Methodists or any of the mainline Protestant groups that are dwindling because they've changed their theology to kind of suit the secular times. You don't think they would love to have the numbers that we have? 1 billion people? Of course. You don't think the Orthodox wish they had the numbers that we have? Of course they do. And the influence, like when the patriarch of fill in the blank of Russia dies, that doesn't even get in the New York Times. But when we die, when the Pope dies, everybody knows, right? So it's that kind of just global influence. So I think, why do non-Catholics dislike the church? I think some of it is jealousy, just simple jealousy, simple envy. And of course, rooted in all that is they've been taught, or you could say really inculcated into them, to think the Catholic Church believes, teaches, and thinks certain things that in fact it doesn't teach, going back to Fulton Sheen and what he said. And so it's easier for non-Catholics to kind of use the Plato's allegory of the cave, kind of just stay in their little cave of not liking the Catholic Church and continuing disbelief, believing things that are not true, than actually going to Catholics or going to the Catechism or Catholic Answers or any of these Q&As and actually finding out the truth. They'd rather just stay and believe what they want to believe. And I think you look at these, and there's going to be other reasons, but I think these are some of the big reasons. But guys, post in the comments, why do you think non-Catholics hate Catholics? And why do you think that Catholics, when somebody in their life goes Protestant, they're like, okay, there's not this visceral hate overall? I'd love to hear from you. Until next time, take care and God bless.